I thought I was alone in the woods until I heard it speak. Part 1. I've always been drawn to the cold, to the kind of isolation only the dead of winter can offer. There's something about the snow-blanketed silence that settles over the world that feels sacred. So, when I got the chance to stay in a remote cabin in northern Minnesota for a week, I jumped at it. The cabin belonged to a friend of my uncle's, a retired logger named Red. He was the kind of man who wore flannel like a second skin and could whittle a masterpiece out of a branch without breaking a sweat. Red gave me the key, warned me to keep the fire stoked, and offhandedly mentioned, "Watch yourself out there. These woods have a way of changing a man." I laughed it off. Everyone likes to make the wilderness sound more mysterious than it is. The first 3 days were perfect. I'd wake up to the glow of the sun filtering through frost-coated windows, spend the day hiking the trails, and return to the warmth of the cabin by evening. The woods were alive with the sounds of nature, snow crunching beneath my boots, the distant howl of coyotes, the occasional rustle of something moving just out of sight. It wasn't until the 4th night that I noticed the silence. It crept in gradually. No bird song in the morning, no distant howls at night. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The only sound was the crackling of the fire and the occasional creak of the cabin settling in the cold. I chalked it up to the weather, but by the 5th day, unease had settled in my chest like a stone. The trails I'd grown familiar with seemed different. Trees gnarled and twisted in ways I didn't remember. Paths that seemed to double back on themselves, leading me in circles. The air carried a strange scent, metallic and sharp like rusted iron. It clung to me, making my nose sting and my stomach churn. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, but the nagging feeling that I wasn't alone wouldn't let me shake it. That evening, I decided to stay close to the cabin. As the sun set, the world outside the frosted windows seemed darker than it should have been. The firelight flickered weakly, casting long, flickering shadows that danced across the walls. Around midnight, I heard the first sound, a distant, bone-deep crack like a tree snapping in half. The noise made me jump, and I sat bolt upright, straining to listen. The wind had picked up, howling around the cabin, but there was something else, buried beneath it. A low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate in my chest. I didn't sleep that night. At dawn, I ventured outside, hoping the light of day would chase away the unease that had gripped me. Instead, I found tracks in the snow. They weren't human, but they weren't quite animal either. Long, narrow impressions with clawed toes that dug deep into the frozen ground. The tracks circled the cabin. Like the story? Like, comment and share it for the next part.